Hello, dear audience. We are continuing our conversation on the theme with Dr. Kyriaki, and it's Real Feast of Healthy Thoughts. And I want to inform you that we are going to continue what we started last time, in the sense that those three topics, faith, hope, and love, are connected together, and we are going to interconnect those three topics. And we spoke about faith last time, and we're continuing with hope. Hope is a very interesting phenomenon. As I was driving to the studio, I was thinking about it and realizing that it is in our lives every second. It is present in everyone's life, starting from the very moment of birth until the last minute of life. Newborn baby hopes that the mother that left the room will come back. The child hopes that the parents will come and pick him or her up from the daycare, or they will come home after work and bring something for him or for her. The teenagers hope for something else. The life opens for them, and they always dream and hope that that's how it's going to stay. And adults have their hopes. They are entering into a real life, and they hope that everything goes the way that they propose, they think. There is hope for married couple. They get married and they hope for their beautiful future life together, life that will always keep them together. There is hope for parents who think that their children will become the people that they dreamed entire their life. And there is also hope for adults, older people, who hope that their lives have been something for the rest of the humanity, for the younger generation, and they hope that they have given something to this world. And there is also hope in the last minute. The person who is dying hopes for one more minute of life, maybe, or for eternal life after dying. So all these hopes are present in our life, and they all have to do something with our psychology, with our mind, and with our life. I would like to bring a couple examples from my own life. The first time I remember that I hoped for something very strongly was when I was probably 5-6 years old. My father promised me a puppy, and the whole next day I was hoping that he will come back with the puppy. It didn't happen right away. It happened maybe a month or years later that he gave me the desired beautiful puppy, but I feel that was the first time I hoped with my entire being to have what I was promised. And we find these kind of promises in the New Testament. It's not about the puppy, but more higher things that matter more than material things around us. So there are different levels of hopes, as I understand. And I want to conclude my introduction with one thing, that we Armenians, and Presbyteria is Greek, and we share very many things in our lives as a nation. We have always rose from the ashes, they say. They have always burnt us, but we have never died, and we have always rose from ashes. And that speaks about a great hope, that we never gave up. We always hoped that this is not the end, it can be better. And I want to mention one interesting understanding that I heard from my English teacher in the seminary. He was a wise man. He told us about greeting that the Armenians use. Usually when we leave somebody's house at night, we say good night. But in Armenian they say good light. And his explanation was that we, having such hard destiny in history, always wish each other to have a good light, because we never knew what's going to light bring for us, what's going to bring us the morning. And we didn't wish as much of a good night as much we wanted them to have a beautiful sunrise and a new day starting with great hope. And after all, every human being going to bed at night hopes for a new day, and everyone waking up hopes for a good day. Presbytera, welcome. Thank you very much for being with us. I introduced different aspects of hope, but I hope that you will give us a higher understanding of it, because these are all part of our daily life, and sometimes they vanish away and we don't need them, what we hope. But there is a hope that we need to have always and gain what is promised. Please introduce us about the understanding that you have of hope.
Thank you, Arkady. Hello, everyone. As we've said before, when we get together, these are real conversations that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And we both come in with having prepared for our topic. We come with notes, maybe enough to give a presentation someplace, but we don't come in with a prepared lecture to give. And I was listening to you and what you were saying, and part of what you said, many striking things, but part of what you said almost is I'm holding back tears, because you were talking about that expression of good light. At the end of the day, when an Armenian Christian would greet another Armenian Christian, they would be wishing each other good light. And you brought me back to 2 years ago, when I lost my father. My father died 2 years ago on the Feast of the Transfiguration in August, and we are now in August. And I remember those last few days of him fighting, discerning what should I do. In fact, the day before he died, we had a very powerful conversation. I'd say it was our last conversation. It was that Sunday morning. I was there before the rest of the family, and he said to me, "Tell me the truth." I go, "What is it, Daddy?" "I'm dying, aren't I?" And I said to him, "Yes, you are, Daddy. You're dying." And then he said, "Well, tell me, when?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, tell me how." And I said, "I don't know. You must tell me how." And I said, "Well, Daddy, I think," and sometimes I would say the Greek baba, which means daddy in Greek. "Well, Baba, I think sometimes my sense is you will notice that your body is getting weaker and weaker. And there'll come a point that you'll notice you're getting weaker and weaker, and God is becoming stronger and stronger. And eventually there'll be a time when you surrender everything you have over to God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you'll know." "Well, when? Tell me." And I said, "Well, I don't think today," which was Sunday, the 5th of August. But then I said, "It could be tomorrow, the 6th of August, which is when it was, or the next day, 3 or 4 days from now, a couple of weeks. I don't know." And then he asked to pray. We prayed. From those few days, we were all of us wrestling, my siblings, my mom, those of us were talking, what do we hope for? And we would hope for wherever there is the most life possible with a capital L, for all of us, especially my dad. Were we encouraging him to stay with us so that he would suffer more, or to enter into the arms of the loving God where he would find more life? And as we were wrestling with these and talking, and I think struggling with this issue of hope, one of my brothers said, "Well, what do we say to Dad? How do we talk to him?" And when we say goodbye, for example, they didn't want to say goodbye. And I said, "Okay, then you say to Daddy, 'See you in the morning.'" Because in Christian theology, one of the terms referring to Christ is he is the new dawn. He is the morning that does not end. And so when we say goodbye to Dad, we can just keep saying, "See you in the morning." And that became sort of our refrain those next few days. And that helped us have hope that the morning was something bigger than all of us could see in the regular daylight. Mm-hmm. And that's been teaching me, and your story also, that all hope, even the hope for the puppy, the hope that we get better from sickness, the hope that we get some kind of internal healing from a kind of damage that might have happened in a relationship or several relationships as we grow up, is always something that comes from beyond us, leading us to something beyond us. And so when hope is authentic, when hope is facing a desire that is real, that is begging to be fulfilled, then it's life-giving and of God and holy. So all hope is holy, and all hope points us to that dawn that knows no setting.
Mm-hmm. I remember a friend who we were talking about hope, and he said, I never say I wish, I always say I hope.
Mm-hmm.
And that was always in my mind. What is the difference between I wish something and I hope for something?
That's great. I was thinking about that earlier today. What's hope? What's desire? And so you're talking about the wish and
As
desire,
a desire, yes.
are very similar. And I think there are two types of desires. And one is, and maybe we've talked about this in our episodes before, that in ancient Christian theology, both in the ancient Greek and Latin, by the way, how the church used the word for desire, when the desire is authentic, in other words, there's a kind of desire that is implanted in us from before our own creation, that according to ancient Christian theology, it was planted in our being, in our hearts, by God the Father himself.
Mm-hmm.
The Greek and the Latin points in that direction. That's an authentic, life-giving desire that's with us, that feels like it's ours, seems like it's ours, but it really comes to us as a gift for ourselves and for others from beyond us. And that's wonderful. And I think the desire sometimes can be very quiet or very loud in our lives. This is something we should be listening to, I think, every day of our lives. Then there's the other kind of desire based in our finite, fallen ego, where we want this, we want that. And so that stage of selfishness, self-centeredness of the fallen ego, that kind of desire is not about serving the greater truth or God's will, what's true for us in the presence of God in all creation, but our own little universe of one. And so what I'm learning over and over again in my own life as a human being and working with people in my office, working with students and just living, is that even when we're discerning the desires that come to us from beyond ourselves, our ego gets in the way, the other fallen desires get in our way. And so it's like being in the garden, tending to the real flowers and vegetables we want to be growing and pulling out the weeds that are there all the time and always trying to spring up.
Just now I was thinking about hope and hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
When we hope for something, doesn't it come from our hopelessness that we cannot gain or get it ourselves, but we hope for it, that it will be given to us? So this is kind of like a paradox, that we hope and we hopelessly wait, or we work for it.
That's very good. There is a writer, you've heard me mention her before, Simone Weil. I think she writes something similar. She said that these desires that come from within us, if we are hungry, then there has to be food to fulfill it. If we are thirsty, then there has to be some kind of water, some kind of entity that will help quench that thirst. And so if we are feeling hopeless, and even if we don't know what the hope is, but it's making us reach out and it's making us look beyond ourselves to quench that, then there must be something out there that can quench that. At the same time, we have to be careful, especially hope. And I think that's one reason why it's good we're talking about faith, hope, and love in this part of our series together. Because hope is a controversial quality. For example, it is part of the spiritual tradition of the Buddhists not to encourage hope. Why? Because hope engenders expectations. The Buddhists have a strict discipline of not having expectations, which in a sense, maybe in classical Christian thinking, we might say those expectations can become idols. Maybe the Buddhist tradition and classical Christianity have in common to discuss more fully. But is the sense of idolatry. We would call these idolatries. The tradition of Buddhism calls them something else. And so they make a very good point. Even the ancient Greeks were very ambiguous about the term hope. Why? Because hope can deceive.
It can become disappointment.
It can become disappointment. It can be very deceptive and lead us down the wrong path. It's an important thing to know that, to ask ourselves often, what is this hope about? and sometimes releasing a hope, so that in that loss of that hope, a new hope can be born that's truer for us. That's a lot of work, to have hope that there's a bigger hope than the one I'm giving up.
A hope can become an idol, or it can lead to disappointment. I was thinking of different levels of hope. The hope type of hopes that I mentioned in the introduction that everyone has, and hope that, for example, St. Paul speaks about hope for this, hope for that, and the ultimate hope is that Christ will come again. Mm-hmm. Do you think that this type of hope, the higher hope, the hope that Paul has, overrides or overcomes the other hopes that will become idols?
Well, I think for people who are very mature in their spiritual life, I think most people would not be too anxious about these things. But I'm a Christian. I'm striving to grow in Christ, mm-hmm. and I have lots of worries and lots of hopes. But I do, find that when I take a minute or two to reprioritize myself in the presence of God, that a lot of my worries and these anxieties are based in real or not so real hopes are better tamed. All hopes, if they are serving the good, are connected to God somehow. How? We don't have to worry. Mm-hmm. In Christian thinking, all hope is connected to Christ Himself.
In hope, is there a nuance of maybe or maybe not? Because it's a hope, it's not a wish, it's not a desire. When we hope something, shouldn't we know that this may happen or may not happen, because it's not up to us, it's just hoping on someone or something else that will bring that particular thing into our life. And it may happen or may not happen. We just hope.
It's doing the legwork of whatever it means our side of the line demands for this hope to take mm-hmm. place, and then letting go of the consequences. And so it's not telling God, well, you told us, hurry up, time's a wasting. It's really surrendering our expectations, how, when, where God will do this. In fact, by surrendering our expectations to how God may address these hopes, actually may be part of the solution for these hopes to be addressed in a way we never even dreamed before, because by having an expectation, we limit what can happen. Mm-hmm. If we do the work and wait with our hands open and receptive to the love of God, a lot can happen. One of the facts about hope is that you're right. We are people made of clay, created in the image and likeness of God, and we don't know what's going to happen. We can try to manipulate things, but then that may not necessarily help for us to get the results we need, because by our manipulating, we might even contaminate that which we're hoping for. I've seen it happen a lot with many people who are trying to rig things to get what they want, and maybe these things happen, but somehow the contamination shows itself at one point or other down the pike after these things have occurred. But hope has a number of dimensions. For example, we need faith first to build on. And so as a minute of review, faith, hope, and love, which is talked about in many parts of the scriptures, but I'm thinking of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, where faith, hope, and love are said by St. Paul to be those qualities that will endure forever, meaning into the eschaton, whatever happens next after we're done with planet Earth. And after planet Earth is done as we understand it, faith, hope, and love will remain. But one of the things I would say is faith, hope, and love prepare us for this end where we meet God face to face. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I think faith, hope, and love are set together is because they're all interconnected. They all interrelate with each other. But they're also, while they are all interrelated, they are also sequential. Faith is the foundation, first. Second is hope. And love, agape love that St. Paul is writing about, is something completely other. Faith, as we said the last time when as a review, has two dimensions to it. The content of the faith, what specifically do we believe? And the verb part of it, the action part of the faith, which is the trust itself. And so when, I'd say the vast majority of the time when we read the scriptures, and Jesus is talking about, in the New Testament, Jesus is talking about faith to his disciples, to his friends. He's referring more to faith in terms of trust. Do you trust me? Do you trust the love of God more than you trust other voices in your life? That's the foundation to hope. Why? Because whatever we discern with trust and faith, if we start our sandwich with faith, that's going to demand for us some kind of initial action. Because trust is not just something, oh, okay, I trust. We have to do something. We have to follow through. And the action can be an action as we know it, or the action can be waiting. That's also an action. But there's a definite action going on. And once that starts, hope kicks in, so to speak, after faith. When we act in faith accordingly, when we act in trust accordingly, things change. Things change in a way that are proving or testing or applying that which we are having trust in, which we are having hope in. And we find ourselves in a new place we've never been before. And more action is needed from this point on. That's where hope kicks in.
What is the connection of the hope that we have with our own values? Does spirituality help us to sustain, to be stronger in our hope? Because sometimes, like when you said about the relationship between the faith and hope, faith as a trust. We believe, we trust, and we hope. And if our hopes don't come through, then we may lose our trust in that person.
That's a beautiful example showing how faith and hope are deeply, intimately interconnected. And so what's happening in the story with Job? God, as a way to test him, because it's an ongoing relationship with God and Job, God is taking away everything he loves, from his wealth to his family to his health and so forth. And so every time something is taken away, Job sits, thinks, reflects, and then acts by trusting God more. Not returning evil for evil in his own way, but walking faithfully, trusting God, doing good as opposed to doing evil. Every time God took something away, he was in a new place. He had less. He was sadder. He had less energy. And yet he kept his eyes on the prize, which was the love of God. And that put him in a deeper relationship with God and with his own self in ways that he had never been tried before. And so that whatever it was that kept him to endure, that is a quality of hope. And I think that endurance, patience, long-suffering patience, I would say, are the qualities of hope in the long run. And we had a little discussion on this a few weeks ago, that a word used again by Simone Weil about how we wait, how we have hope, is the Greek expression en hypomone. En hypomone, which means being deeply waiting with or in patience, but it's a kind of patience where you wait through death, like walking through the valley of death. It's that kind of walking with trust through the valley of death. It's that kind of hope that en hypomone is pointing to.
At the moment, I remember Diaries of Country Priest. The key point for the book, this young priest, a Catholic priest who is in a far village and is going through a tremendous amount of trial and suffering and difficulties. When they take a boat with one of the villagers to cross the water, the villager says, "Father, I envy you in a sense because you have such a strong life of prayer," he says. And then the priest turns to him and says, "Are you making fun of me?" He says, "No." Why? And the priest says that I entire my life try to pray and it never works. I have never been able to pray. What are you talking about that you envy my prayer life? And the villager smiles and says, "That's what I mean. You never give up." The perseverance, that you always try and try and try, you never give up.
Life is difficult, Arkady, and there are many people out there preaching words of good cheer, which is good. It's good to be of good cheer. It's good to remind people of the good. And how to do that in a way acknowledging that life is difficult, that we get hurt, that people get sick, people are unfairly and unjustly treated. And we can't escape that. In fact, it's hard to bear sometimes if we are striving to be real with ourselves and just with the people we see in our own families and neighborhood, to see some of the gross injustices and to see some of the circumstances of life that happen to people that just don't make sense. And it's just so hard to have hope. Erik Erikson, who's one of the original founding ancestors of developmental psychology, divided human life into 8 stages. And he said the first stage of life, which is from birth, I think, to about 18 months old, is a task of having trust or mistrust in life. And so trust or mistrust, well, that's very close to faith. Can we trust the world to be saturated by the love of a benevolent God? So that's trust versus mistrust. Faith, having faith in the providence of God. Then the second, again, hope. What builds on hope? Well, ironically, I think first enemy of hope is despair. Hopelessness. Not just hopelessness, despair. And in Erik Erikson's model, despair is the anti-task, the task of the last stage of life. So faith, hope, and love are encouraging us from a human perspective, from the earliest essence of our lives, acting in ways that will take us to the last breath of our lives to act with hope. And so hope, because the hope itself is based in something beyond that which we can see. When I was thinking about hope, I was trying to think, what makes hope so hard to have? What makes it so hard? And then what came to my mind was, oh, it's just like winemaking. Now, I've never made wine in my life. And I'm thinking, why is it like winemaking? And, well, the faith part of winemaking, that's faith, hope, and love, okay? The faith part of winemaking is the trust part. Well, the grapes have to surrender themselves off the vine to go to the next stage. That trust, that surrender, is the grape saying, okay, I will fall into your hands, winemaker. The next stage is, well, the grapes, what happens to the grapes at that stage? They are squashed and all their juice is extracted. Okay, that's in the first stage. That's what faith does. That's what trust does. We get our juices extracted out of us. Thank you very much. We are never the same ever again, ever again. And so that's what happens with, once we truly trust, once we truly have faith, we are never the same after that. But it's a surrender. What happens to our juices after that? Well, then the winemaker puts those juices in a carefully prepared barrel. And I don't know how, I know that there's a whole science and art to the barrel making of that which, when the grape juice is poured into the barrels, and it's sealed shut, and it just stays there to ferment. And a lot is happening inside the barrel that we don't see over time. And that's what hope is about. It's like we are inside this barrel and we can't see what's going on, and yet persevering, staying in the barrel as if we can escape. But let's say technically we can escape. We have the free will to back out. But that we keep choosing to stay in that barrel, of being somehow changed through that process, so that at some point the winemaker will say, well done, my beloved servant. And the last stage is becoming wine, becoming that which is of love. Hope at times kind of feels like we are just floundering around, but we are really being contained in something much bigger than we understand.
I watched recently a movie where I watched it from the middle. I don't know how it happened, but it started this way. There's a boat, big boat in the middle of the ocean, far from the shore, and there's these 3 families that for some reason somehow fell off the boat, and they are fluttering on the ocean, and the boat is right there, beautiful, huge yacht standing next to them, but there's no way to climb up. So they have the boat, but they are in the water, and there is nobody around. The author of the story is trying to show a very important lesson, very deep psychology, how people struggle, how different people go through different ways. What do they choose? One of them just surrendered. The other one was just trying to protect the boat. There was one person, a woman, who was the most quiet. They always connected her with a baby that was inside of the boat. And there was a monitor outside on the side of the boat that she could hear that the baby is crying over there. And interestingly enough, this was the only person who was saved. She stayed until the end. Everybody perished. This was the main point of the movie, that shows that when you hope for higher things, then there are ways to go. And the same way, when I was driving, I was thinking of a movie Titanic. When the boat is collapsing, it's going under the water, and everybody is reacting to it differently. People steal from each other in that moment. People try to cheat to get out of the boat. And the captain is very calm, and he's standing in his room and waiting until it's going to go under. So everyone has its own agendas, its own purposes in life, and hope appears differently.
Even the captain of the Titanic, who was peacefully going down with his ship, must have placed hope for himself in something higher than himself that helped him have that kind of serenity. Mm-hmm. The woman that survived in that story you saw in the movie, who you said she acted differently than the others, who were floundering around one way or the other, with various maybe pseudo-hopes. You know, one you said was like an owner of the boat or rented the boat, and he was drowning but caring more about what happened to the boat than what was happening to himself with the other people. And so this is probably what the Buddhists and the ancient Greeks were concerned about, putting our faith, our trust, in the wrong thing for which to have hope. And then this other woman, she was listening with the ears of love to her child on deck. And so somehow that love for her child, which was that took her to a love beyond herself, helped her survive. Again, this is pointing back to patience and long-suffering. Long-suffering en hypomone, the kind of suffering where even when, as Simone Weil would say, even when you're waiting for the bridegroom, like the story of the wise maidens, you're waiting for the bridegroom and people come to you saying that he's dead, he's never going to come, that you keep waiting anyway. Either you're foolish or you're really wise. And so as a Christian, how we might perceive and discern what's most important at times might be a little different than how some other people might be perceiving and discerning how things are important.
There are several ancient stories about people being in danger and one of them going out to find a way out of the danger, and they all lose their hope. They don't believe that that person is going to come back. In one of the stories, the person who left for help, his spouse in there too. So they were a married couple and the husband left too. And everybody was losing their hopes, but the wife said that he will come back if he is alive. The only thing that will keep him from coming back is death. I wanted to mention about what I said about the New Testament earlier, that we don't find very much about hope when Christ is with them. Meaning in the Gospels. In the 4 Gospels we find only maybe 12 times that they talk about different types of hope. They don't talk as much as, for example, St. Paul talks after Christ.
Well, if Jesus was going around saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life, or if he would go around saying, I am the way, I am the narrow way, or I am the vine and you are the branches, I think personifies hope, puts the followers, the disciples' eyes in the direction they should be looking, which is on him. There's a Greek name, elpidophoros. Elpida in Greek means hope. Elpidophoros is one who bears hope. But the name refers to Christ himself. I am the way and the truth and the life. I am the resurrection. And so hope from a Christian, classical Christian tradition refers to a person, capital P. When we own that hope for ourselves, when we learn more about what this means for us and come clean with ourselves, Because sometimes we have hopes, but maybe there are deeper hopes we don't even want to articulate, because they will take us into deeper waters. They will take us into more troubling places, and more painful places. And it's not easy being a human being, especially if you're a Christian trying to live the principles of the Gospels, where in the Beatitudes, Jesus reminds us that blessed are you, happy, blessed are you, who will be persecuted for my name's sake. Yes, there may be even persecutions that come. I do want to share a couple of phrases I found in doing my research a little bit, that of someone who's very well respected in many Christian theological circles. And his name is Professor Wolfhart Pannenberg, a very well respected Lutheran theologian who has done a phenomenal amount of writing, especially in the area of systematic theology. And he wrote beautifully about hope. And some of the phrases I'd like to share at least a couple right here. He says that hope frees us from the imprisonment in self and lifts us above the self. He also says that Christian hope gives wings to love. This is telling us that hope changes things. Hope provides an opening for things to be changed, A, by God's love, and B, by our response as well.
That's very interesting that Paul says that above all is the love, but in this description we find very interesting picture that the love needs wings that are of hope. I still have a lot of quotes from the Old Testament that I would like to speak about, but we are running out of time. So I would like to finish with one thing, is that are we saved? I remember finding a book in the Holy Cross bookstore called Are We Saved? And that's been a question over the years for me, comparing different types of theology, Orthodox and non-Orthodox theologies. Are we saved, or we hope for salvation? I have had discussions with my classmates, and one of the phrases that I always remember, that we have hope for salvation. We are not saved yet. Is this true or not? But I think we will leave this for the next show. Thank you very much, and this was very interesting. And thank to all the audience that are following to our conversations, because this is not a monologue. First, it's a dialogue, and the second, we would like you to participate, and we would like you to share your thoughts. Even though we don't see you, but your presence and your participation in exchange of thoughts is very important. That gives us ideas and becomes like what St. Paul says to his churches: pray for me and I pray for you. It's kind of a thought exchange. We are together. It keeps us together. Thank you again, and have a good day.